Hello, everyone. This is Clay Chase with Torrey Hills Capital. Welcome to the Ventripoint Diagnostics podcast for November 24th, 2020. Hope and trust you're all doing well under the circumstances. And here's hoping that with some of this recent news about vaccines and such, that things will start to get back to normal very soon. I know that we're all ready for it. I know we are. Now, since the company we're talking today with is very new to the Torrey Hills Capital family of companies, plus given the fact that they've been flying pretty much under the radar for the last 9 months or so, some of you might not be that familiar with them, which is why we're very excited to bring them to your attention today. Ventripoint Diagnostics is a commercial stage healthcare company that has developed an extremely valuable diagnostics platform which addresses a very large unmet need in the medical scanning market space. What this platform does, and it really is fantastic, is it enables the massive in-place fleet of two-dimensional ultrasound devices, the echocardiograms, if you will, to create highly detailed and accurate three-dimensional views of the heart. Now, prior to the introduction of Ventripoint solution, the only way to get this data was using MRI technology. But the use of that equipment to perform this task had a number of significant drawbacks, which we will cover during the call today. And these limitations to using MRI to scan the heart have really swung the door wide open for Ventripoint to move their platform into the healthcare community in a big way. And we'll be addressing that during the presentation as well. You'll see them starting to penetrate the market pretty significantly. Now, following today's presentation, which lasts about 45 minutes, we'll have a short Q&A session. That being said, if you have a question during the presentation, feel free to type it into the Q&A icon on the Zoom taskbar or raise your hand and we can enable your microphone. You can ask the question online. Also, post-presentation, we'll be sending you a brief survey to complete to give us impressions of the company and key takeaways from today's meeting. It's important that you get that survey back to us in a timely manner so we can get that information back to the company. Okay, let's get started. Ventripoint Diagnostics trades on the OTC market under the ticker VPTDF and on the TSX Venture Exchange under the ticker symbol VPT. Shares currently trading around 6.5 cents US, representing a market cap of around $5 million. In other words, plenty of headroom here for the shareholder appreciation that we expect to come in as they step up sales volume of their systems, which they are doing right now. With us today to discuss Ventripoint Diagnostics and their growth strategy going forward is the company's Executive Chairman and CEO, Dr. George Adams. Hi, George. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Clay. Glad to be here.
Great. Well, we're really happy to have you on today. Super exciting company. Great time to be looking at it. So the floor is now yours. Take it away.
Thank you. All right. So we are a imaging company, analysis company. So we analyze images. We use an artificial intelligence approach to that we have been developing for over a decade. And we were one of the first pioneering companies to use artificial intelligence on cardiac ultrasound. And we remain the leader in the world on being able to do three-dimensional reconstructions from 2D images, such that we are the only company in the world approved by the US FDA, Health Canada, European Union, and even China to be equivalent to MRI in terms of analyzing all four chambers of the heart for 3D function, volumetric function, volumes, and ejection fraction. We are rolling that device out. We've been doing clinical trials and clinical assessments on all different versions, and we're now in our third design revolution. We believe we have the device that everybody wanted us to have a long time ago, but we took a while to engineer the right one. And actually we needed to create our own tracking system to really make it work properly. So we've now done 10 machines out in 10 hospitals around the world, and they're being used clinically, and we're in the process of getting 12 more placements out in the next few months. We're really entering into a growth phase where we would like to get 80 to 100 hospitals, top cardiovascular hospitals and clinics in the world up and running on the system by middle of 2022. About 18 months, we figure it will take us to get those 80 to 100 units installed operationally and running. That threshold is the threshold we believe is the right threshold to show adoption in the marketplace of the technology. And the market is huge. So in all medical device rollouts, you have to get the leaders, the knowledge and opinion leaders of the field working with your equipment, and then they tell other people, and then it takes off. So, and history is showing that when you get to 80 to 100 top people using your devices, that's when everybody has to buy in. So there's a clear path to liquidity with a nice ROI, as Clay mentioned. We have a very small market cap given the opportunity before us. The beginnings of this company were really based around understanding that everybody in the world, every cardiologist in the world has a 2D ultrasound machine. Some have very expensive ones, some have very cheap ones, but they, you don't look at a heart anymore with listen to a heart with a stethoscope and try and figure out what's wrong with it. Everybody, even in the third world, has an ultrasound machine. And so, but it's still, that machine doesn't give you accurate and reliable volumes. It gives you slices through the heart, so you can look at a plane and see how the heart is behaving in one plane or other. A standard cardiac exam is 16 planes, 16 views from all different sides. So if you ever had one done, they move the probe around your chest, underneath your sternum and over to the side of your ribs and everything, just trying to get a good window. And then when they get a good window, they can get 3 or 4 views in that window, and then they move to a different window. And it's especially difficult to get good images on the right ventricle of the heart, and that's just the anatomy of the body and the physics of sound. It's certainly some people give you better images than others, and so between the difficulty in knowing exactly where you're looking at the heart, and everybody has a different idea of where the heart is in these images, you get a lot of variability, and you don't get an accurate and reliable result. And that means you don't do a good job treating the patient because you don't have confidence in the analysis that you've done of the echocardiogram. So the only real way to get a good, accurate, reliable result is to do an MRI. Unfortunately, there's limited numbers of MRIs around. There's hundreds of millions of people with heart problems, and there's just not enough MRIs to put those many people in there. And also, it's very inconvenient. It's very costly. And you have to lie motionless in the MRI for up to 2 hours, and it's very claustrophobic, and they have to inject contrast dye into you. So usually they have to sedate you, at least for some part of the procedure. And so that's all of that makes it it's not something you want to do more than once in your life. Our system is on the left-hand side. You'll see a little cart on a little computer on a cart. That's our system. It's attached to in the middle frame, you'll see an operator using it. We have in his hand, you see there's the probe, which he's using to get the images. In that big machine in the foreground is a standard ultrasound machine that happens to be a Philips IE33. But we are agnostic. We will hook our equipment up to anybody's ultrasound machine. Philips, GE, Siemens, Samsung, Fuji, Toshiba, Panasonic, you name it, we don't care. We've had machines hooked up to every known ultrasound that works fine. So our machine again is in the back there, at the very far back of that image, and so we have a wire that comes from our machine to the probe, which tracks where the probe is in three-dimensional space and in orientation. So we know when the sonographer takes that video clip of that plane and that image through the heart, we know exactly where that is in three-dimensional space. We also, that little square white thing on the chest there is a crystal which allows the patient to move around so they can move during the exam, and we maintain the understanding of exactly where everything is. And that's a disposable item, so we also have a recurring revenue from disposable on a per procedure basis. So this is what 2D images of heart look like. If you were a cardiologist, you would look at all this and go, right, I see where the right ventricle is, I see where the left ventricle is, I see where the apex of the heart is. And and so we asked them to identify a few locations on each of these views, just anything that they're very confident, this is a piece of the valve or this is a piece of the wall. And we integrate that sparse data into a three-dimensional model. That's our knowledge-based reconstruction artificial intelligence magic sauce that we use. We're the only ones in the world who've been able to take all that sparse data and turn it into an accurate model of the heart and give you data equivalent to, this happens to be the right ventricle of a heart. Is as you can see, it's rather kind of a funny shape, but we're able to show them not only what the shape of that ventricle looks like, but also exactly where that ultrasound image that they captured was in there. And that's good information for cardiologists. They often don't know exactly where the plane that they're looking at is in the heart. So it makes it hard for them to figure out what they're actually looking at. The system automatically calculates all the standard volumes and cardiac output and ejection fraction. So this is really what we bring to the party, is a ability and to do in 5 minutes what it takes an MRI to do in a couple hours, allowing the patient to move around rather than staying motionless, no contrast media or sedation required. You get immediate images, 5 minutes of analysis, and on the very first appointment at your cardiologist, you can get the information. We sell the equipment for as a capital purchase, $50,000. We also have a lease and a per use model, which I'll show you a little later. Obviously, an MRI costs $2 to $4 million to buy, costs $500,000 to run, just maintaining the equipment. And as one CFO of one hospital told me, and it cost me $20 million to build a new wing on the hospital because it can't have any steel anywhere near an MRI machine. So, it's an expensive business to have to set up an MRI unit. We've been at this for 10 years. We've been through the FDA, Canada, and Europe 3 times with different versions of the device. And we finally had to design and invent and design and manufacture our own tracking system to get the accuracy we needed to be as equivalent to MRI. And when we first went to the FDA and said we were going to show that we're as good as MRI, our predicate device is going to be MRI, they just laughed and said, "You'll never make it with ultrasound." And they were totally amazed when we showed them the data. So we now have version 3, which we believe has all the user friendliness you need to go forward. So our key markets we're targeting right now are congenital heart disease. That's usually children, but now there are more adults who have had congenital heart disease, had multiple surgeries, and have grown up and they have a normal lifespan now. But if you're born with a problem with your heart, it's almost always the right side of the heart which has the problem. If you have a problem with the left side of your heart, which is the part that pumps the blood out to the whole body, the right side of the heart only pumps the blood through the lungs and over to the left side. So there's a low pressure side, the right side, and a high pressure side, which is the left side, which pumps it all out. If you have a problem with your left heart, you don't get born. So people who do get born with a heart problem, you can have a pretty significant problem with your right heart and still be born. And then you're going to go through a long procedures, many procedures to make sure your heart is okay and to fix it, surgeries, replace your valves, all sorts of things. But you can't live a normal life. And so, but you have to be followed for the rest of your life. And there are certain life experiences like pregnancy, which causes all sorts of concern for the cardiologist, because there is a huge increased load, 40% increased load on the heart during the third trimester of a pregnancy. So, people who have known right heart problems have to be monitored extremely carefully during that period. And actually the standard of care says that these people should have a cardiac ultrasound done every 3 months for the rest of their life. That doesn't get done because that often, because again, trying to get a good image of the right side of the heart and analyze it properly is very difficult. It's very easy with the way we do it, but it's very difficult using conventional techniques. And you're not
George?
Yes.
I have a quick question here. Can you talk a little bit about the accuracy of your system? I'm sure you looked at your data versus like an MRI data. Are you plus or minus just a few percentage, or do you have a feel for that?
Yeah, well, sure. The variability of measuring something like right ventricular volume using a conventional technique, a 2D technique where you use stacking of discs and that kind of a technique, that's plus or minus about 15%.
Okay.
MRI is about plus or minus 2 to 3%, and we are similarly plus or minus 2 to 3%.
Oh, great!
So,
wow.
So we're absolutely equivalent both in terms of the accuracy and the precision. So not only do we, if your volume is 75.2 then we get it to be 75.2. And if in the MRI is 75.2 plus or minus 2, then in our system it's also 75.2 plus or minus 2. And that's why the FDA said it'll never happen. And they were blown away with it when we gave them the data from a clinical trial. It took us 2 years to do that clinical trial because we had to have someone go into an MRI and get the whole full MRI scan done and then stick around and have the echo done.
Sure.
A lot of people after they get out of the MRI don't want to stick around for anything else. They want to go and get the heck out of here. Anyway, we were
I just had one. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so we were able to get that study done. When we did it at the top schools, Harvard, Mayo, Cleveland, Baylor, Johns Hopkins, Toronto. We did it at the top cardiac centers in the United States. So there was no doubt the data was rock solid and was very impressive. So yeah, that's all been published. We have over 150 publications showing that the system is as accurate and precise as MRI. There's no doubt about that. The issue has always been usability and getting people to really put it into the workflow, their normal workflow, and really achieve that now. So the second major application we want is pulmonary hypertension. So pulmonary hypertension is when you get congested lungs from COPD or lung cancer or now COVID. It's harder for the right side of the heart to pump blood through your lungs when you have congested lungs. And so the right heart has to work harder. And the first thing a heart does when it has to work harder is it gets bigger. And so by measuring the size of the heart and the amount of blood it pumps out each cycle, you can determine how much the heart is struggling to keep up. And so that's another application that affects infants from 6-month-old to 85-year-old people. So there's no age limit to that. Anybody can get pulmonary hypertension. And again, it's a very serious problem. You can die from right heart failure just as well as you can die from left heart failure. And we're all used to people having a heart attack and dying from left heart failure, but actually there are quite a few people who die from right heart failure due to congested lungs.
Yeah, that's one thing you never want to hear from your doctor is enlarged heart.
Yes. No,
it's not a good
cardiomegaly is the medical term, and you don't want to have the doctor tell you you've got cardiomegaly.
Yep.
The other big application, which is come up, is being the cardiotoxic effects of chemotherapy. So it turns out anybody who gets treated for cancer, chemotherapy, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, about 20 or 30% of those people, when they're finished their therapy, have now got a chronic heart problem. And that's because all of those therapies target very active cells in the body. And the most active cell in your body, of course, is your heart, pumping away day in and day out. So in fact, the American Heart Association has put out their very first scientific statement a few years ago saying, if you've been through chemotherapy and your cancer is under control, you need to go see your cardiologist because you're now more likely to die from a heart problem than the original cancer. And they got access to all the cases in the United States, millions of cases, and analyzed them, and were able to show definitively that was true. So people now who've been through chemotherapy for cancer need to be seen every 3 months and sorted into people with large right ventricles and dysfunctional left hearts, and followed every 3 months for the rest of their life and treated appropriately. And so that's why we're very excited to get the very first installation of the version 3 device we have. It was into MD Anderson Hospital in Houston, which of course is the #1 cancer hospital in the world, and sees 1.5 million patients a year. So it's a huge, and they are very excited to have our device and to start looking at their cancer patients and to see what they can do to reduce this. Having 30% of the people have a heart problem after the therapy. It's going to take a while. They're going to use it clinically just to identify those people right away. But I think they will be using, more machines, get more machines to start doing research on how they can modify the therapy to reduce that fraction. But, we haven't changed the therapeutic regime, the drugs or the way we use them in cancer in 30 years. So it's going to take a lot of work to show how to change it so you don't have the cardiac effects, but I'm sure they can do it. And the last one is COVID. Well, now we're seeing 40 to 60% of people with COVID, even if they have mild symptoms, are having enlarged right hearts and dysfunctional left hearts. And now there's a whole tens of thousands of people what they call long haulers who had COVID months ago and now have chronic heart problems, chronic kidney
Yeah,
problems, liver
you're
problems.
seeing that more and more in the news right now about people with kind of chronic post-COVID condition now.
Yeah, I saw Dr. Fauci even
Yep.
had a few comments to make about the long haulers and how concerned everybody is about this. This
Right.
could generate a whole generation of people with these long-term effects, which are quite devastating. So
Right.
we are now putting our devices into hospitals, which are going to start using them on COVID. Won't be long. We'll have some COVID hearts to show people. Maybe next time we have one of these sessions, I'll be able to show you a COVID heart and exactly what happened to that heart.
Wow.
And there was
That'd be interesting.
the people at Mount Sinai, New York, published a paper showing that the larger your right side of your heart is, the more likely you are going to die from COVID. So it's
From
not
COVID.
just an acute effect; it's actually it's a direct correlation. The more your right heart is struggling, the more likely you're going to die. That's it.
Makes sense.
So anyway, the system works wonderfully well. It's very quick and efficient, very cost effective, and gives you much better data than you would get from any other system. Heart disease, as you know, is a big problem. Still #1 worldwide. It's been that way for 50 years, so I don't see it changing much. And it's critical to measure all these numbers and measure them sequentially over time and see what the trend line is on the patient. You can't do the variability right now in the way you analyze echocardiograms is so bad that you can't actually compare the one you did before to the one you just did today. And if there's a difference, believe it. So with our system, you can actually plot the trend line and you can monitor whether the heart is stable, whether it's getting bigger, whether it's getting smaller, and you can adjust therapy accordingly. So there's lots of benefits are going to come from doing repetitive cases now. There's a $1.4 billion a year spent on new echocardiogram machines. We are basically a cheap machine. $50,000, that's not a very expensive ultrasound machine. The ones they typically use in high-end ones in cardiac cost 5 to 10 times that amount of money. And so, there's still lots of room for improvement. There's $200 billion a year spent on cardiovascular disease in the United States every year, and that number is about 5 years old, so it's probably closer to 400 billion now. But it's just a big number, right? So
You
in
said
the last 5.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that in terms of the cost, the $50,000 price point, I think you said the other day that some of the just the tips of some of these ultrasound systems is like $25,000, $30,000, right? Something like that.
The probes, yeah.
Yeah,
the probes run, yeah. The probes can run up to $80,000 just a probe. Never mind the base electronic. Most of the early signal processing and all the sort of getting rid of all the noise, the electronic noise, and everything is done in the probe. And so
Right.
the data that actually gets sent down the wire into the machine is already pre-processed quite significantly. And so these probes are very sophisticated electronic devices.
Great. Thanks. Sorry about the interruption.
No problem. I'm always happy to explain something. People always say, how do you know all this stuff? Well, I've been doing this for 35 years. So, you hear a lot. And I hardly forget anything technically. My own people's names, no, I can forget those in 10 seconds, but technical stuff I remember. So anyway, the last five weeks, we've been able to put in a device in MD Anderson, which is, I said, #1 cancer hospital in the world. Dr. Box there is very excited to have it. In Erasmus Hospital in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. It's the #1 cardiovascular hospital in Europe. It's both a pediatric and mostly a pediatric hospital. So they're going to be using it on those children with congenital heart disease. And actually in Europe, the pediatric hospitals look out for the adults all the way through. So once you have a pediatric patient, you're going to have that patient for the rest of their life. And not so much in the United States. It's more, in Canada, it's, children's hospital look after you until you're an adult, and then the adult hospital looks after them after that. Which, in fact, Peter Monk Cardiac Center in Toronto was the last one we just put in November, a few weeks ago. And it's an adult center, the largest cardiovascular center in Canada. And they have a huge congenital heart disease and pulmonary hypertension unit. And that's the unit that's grabbed onto our device. And we should have them up and running end of this week or maybe next week. They're very excited as well because they've been, they have, 10,000 patients that they deal with. Their referral area goes all the way to James Bay. So there's
Right.
a lot of people that they want to get in there and put through our machine and get a good baseline analysis of their heart so that it can then start following them in real time instead of what they do now. So yeah, all exciting, very good. In fact, that's our go-to-market strategy, is to get these machines in the hands of the key opinion leaders in these big, large centers. Everybody follows the leader in the medical world, and get them start talking about this. And all of those people in these hospitals have agreed to do seminars for us, online webinars to other cardiologists to say what kind of patients they use it on, when they use it, and why it makes a difference. So with those will start early in the new year. We'll start having those webinars, and we are able to partner with different associations like the American Adult Congenital Association, or even the American Heart Association, or the American Society for Echocardiography. All have partnership programs where they will set up a webinar, and you'll have 500 to 1,000 echocardiographers on the line, and you can go through exactly what, when and where and why you use your device. So it's a very powerful way to get a very targeted market. And we'll start those as soon as we have. And when you have somebody who's the top cardiologist for cancer patients in the world giving that webinar, you get a very good attendance. So that's where we're headed. In terms of market size, this is the number of machines out there already used on oncology, pulmonary hypertension, and congenital heart disease in different jurisdictions, US, Canada, Europe. So you total it all up, there's about 40,000 cardiac ultrasound machines out there that we could attach one of our devices, our VMS devices to, and then turn it into a poor man's MRI. It's just, MRI works just as well, so I'm not sure poor man. Just a
better way to do it, better mousetrap.
Better, faster way to do it.
Yeah.
And get data today instead of 3 months from now. And so, 40,000, that's, once you start adding COVID in, or you start adding other indications like high-risk pregnancy, or some of the other ones that they're presenting to us now, pacemaker implantations, defibrillator implantations. All of these require detailed cardiac analysis before you make the decision to go ahead and do that. TAVI, replacement of your valves and things like that. So, these procedures all have, I was saying earlier to Clay, pacemaker implantations only work 1/3 of the time. 2/3 of the time, they either don't work at all or they do damage. And that's a $50,000 to $75,000 procedure that doesn't work 2/3 of the time. So, and I'm convinced that if you had a better analysis of the heart, all 4 chambers of the heart, you'd be able to sort people into people who would benefit from a pacemaker versus not. Versus doing as I said, it's a very expensive diagnostic, $50,000 test to find out that pacemakers won't work on your heart. So,
well, that would be a tremendous value add, to be able to predict in a better way.
So we have lots of those other applications, but just looking at these ones where we know that they're right heart centric, that right heart analysis would definitely have an impact. This is a $2 billion market for us. So we have 2 revenue models. One is the one I talked to you about, $50,000. Buy it for $50,000, $5,000 a year for maintenance and access and support. And then we have a consumable, and we haven't quite priced out the consumable yet on terms of on a per patient basis on that little square patch I showed you. The other one is a lease pay per use model. So $15,000 a year to lease the machine. And for that, you get the first 200 cases free. And then after that's $50 a case. This is a model which is working very well, being very well received in the United States, where they have, a reimbursement code. So they can get paid anywhere from $98 to $200 to do this procedure. It's a 10-minute procedure. So there's a lot, that's a profit center that immediately, they install it and get it operational. And, their break even is 75 to 150 cases, which in a busy center would be a week.
Wow.
So they, after a week, they would have paid for the lease, and they would now be making $150 a case. And so
now, wasn't there also some discussion, George, in a prior meeting we had, that there's an opportunity to take this coding reimbursement level up to a higher level based on the expense of using an MRI to do the same thing?
Right. So the reimbursement code for an MRI, cardiac MRI, is anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000. Again,
Right.
depending whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, third party, Aetna, third party payer, depending on how good your insurance policy is, you can pay more for an MRI. So, we deliver $1,200 to $2,000 worth of value, and the reimbursement code is $100 to $200. So
Right.
we've been told by reimbursement experts that we could easily petition and get the code up to $350 to $500.
Wow, that would be great.
So not only could the hospital would be making money at $100 to $200, they would be making a lot more money at $350 to $500. And we would accordingly increase our per use fee up
Sure.
to $150 to $200, so that we
Right,
would
share it with them a bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that would work for fine. Eventually that would ramp its way down like all reimbursement codes, but that would take 5 to 10. These codes get reset every couple of years, but they don't come down. They don't get halved every couple of years. So but even at $1,200 to $2,000 for an MRI, if you're in there for 2 hours, the people running the MRI is losing money. So when I talk to people who the CFOs of hospitals about why they do cardiac MRI, they say if we could get rid of it, we would love it. it's a losing procedure for us. And in that same 2 hours, we could do 10 procedures, and we would get paid $1,200 each for each one of those procedures. So doing a cardiac case means we lose almost $10,000 of revenue.
Yeah, it looks like you have tailwind with the people who actually do the diagnostics, as well as the payors that are having to pay for the diagnostics.
Oh, absolutely.
And patients who don't have to go through an MRI. It's a win-win-win, right?
The patient wins, the doctor wins, the payer wins, the hospital wins, everybody wins if they install. So we just need to validate all that information, and MD Anderson and some other top centers in the United States are going to help us with that. We need 3 centers to simply document the benefit of the system, and then we can apply for a new CPC code.
New code. Great.
So we have 10 sites up and running. We have 12 sites in progress, 5 in Canada with 2 more to come, 1 in the United States, MD Anderson, with 4 more to come, 3 in the UK. 1 will be done next week, and then we have 2 more after that. 1 in Europe already done, Erasmus, 3 more coming, and we have 3 sites up and running in China. So it's early days, but we're very encouraged by the feedback. People saying that it's very user-friendly. It fits right into the workflow. We have sonographers now saying they can use it all day, every day. It's virtually doesn't change anything, how they do anything in their procedures, and it just gives better answers. So, and it actually makes every sonographer better, because they can now see exactly, when they finish the analysis, they can actually see how well they did getting views of the heart that they thought they were getting. And they're often surprised that they're so far, what they thought they were getting is not what they already got. And so they go back and adjust them. So in fact, in our clinical trials in the United States, we heard from every echo lab that used the system that their sonographers got better every time they used our system.
Right.
They were very amazed.
That's great.
These were sonographers that had been cardiac ultrasound sonographers for 20 years, and yet they got better. So that's another, fringe benefit of the system. We don't push that very hard, but that's a feedback we've been gotten.
Hey, George, we've got a question from one of our attendees, Lincoln. There you go. Go ahead, Lincoln.
Yeah, George, I was wondering, with this device, what is the training period for a trained ultrasonographer to learn how to use it?
Okay, so we do everything remotely now. Remote install, remote calibration, and remote training. If you're already an echocardiographer, the system takes you less than an hour to learn how to do it. It's very user-friendly and intuitive. And when we did usability studies, which were part of our last FDA submission, we brought in sonographers, trained them to use it in an hour, certified they did it, sent them away for 3 weeks, and brought them back. and had them do some more cases, and 100% of them remembered how to do it and were able to do the case accurately. So not only is it easy to do and be trained, but you don't forget.
And then you're saying that the findings that you get is equivalent to an MR, a cardiac MRI?
Correct, absolutely, for all 4 chambers of the heart. Yep.
And you get, so that the procedure itself would just be similar to, or take the duration similar to a normal echocardiogram?
Yes, it's identical. I mean, you just have to clip the tracking device onto the probe, and away you go. You just do exactly what you would normally do in a regular 2D ultra exam, except that we capture the orientation and the location of the probe continuously. And so then we can go back and marry up exactly where the probe was when they were taking when the video clip was taken, and integrate all that information. So that's how we do it. Yeah, so as far as the sonographer is concerned, there's nothing different except they have 2 wires going to the probe instead of 1. Everything else is identical.
All right, and then the data is actually sent into the ultrasound machine, and then that data spits out immediately, or does it take time for the process?
No, it's they can do the analysis right on the machine right there on the spot, or most hospitals, they just that's a DICOM file. It loads up onto the PACS archive server, and they download it in a viewing room, in a nice dark room on a big high resolution screen, and the sonographer in there or the cardiologist in there reads the case. And so it would be done, most places it would be done later in the day, but you can do it right there on the spot. It's only a 5 minutes worth of effort to analyze it and get the right answers. The processing time to get the answer once you've selected it, and all that time is just selecting the dots and making sure the anatomical features and making sure. So depending on what you're doing, if you're doing something like a left ventricle, you only need 5 or 6 points. You can do that in under a minute. If you want to do all 4 chambers, it's going to take you 5 or 6 minutes to do all 4 chambers. The hardest one to do, of course, is the right ventricle. You need about a minimum of 14 identifiable points, which is never really a problem. And in fact, when we did our clinical trial, we had the core lab, the cardiologist in the core lab who were analyzing the Ventripoint scans, said these were some of the worst scans they'd ever seen in their life. And if a sonographer had presented them with these scans, they would have rejected them as absolute garbage. But because we were paying them to analyze them, they went ahead and analyzed them, and they got the right answer. And they were amazed that they got the right answer when they could hardly pick out anything on any of the views. So another advantage of the system is you don't have to have a perfect images to get the right answer.
So the dimensions you get after you get the data points, the dimensions you get the equivalent to the dimensions you get if you do an MRI. Is that
the volumes you get? Yeah. So the end diastolic volume, the volume of the chamber when it's full of blood, the volume of the chamber after it's finished pumping out as much blood as it's going to pump out, and the ratio of that, called the ejection fraction, are all identical to MRI. Yes.
So I just want to make sure that the ejection fraction that you get is similar, right?
They're identical. Yeah.
Identical.
Within, you said 2%, right, George? Something like that?
2%.
Of what, an MRI? Just so you know, George.
They were statistically equivalent. I mean, you could not tell the data set. If I gave you the data sets from the MRI and data set from the echo, you can't tell one from the other. I mean, they were, the FDA gave us the definition of, gave us 6. We had to not only get all 3 both volumes and ejection fraction right, plus or minus a small fraction, but we also had to get the variation between all 3 of those right. So we had 6 targets we had to hit before they would certify us as equivalent to the MRI, and we hit every one of them.
So, how much of is that improvement in regards to the normal 2D MRI? Because you can get ejection fraction, 2D echo, because you can get a 2D echo, and that gives you an ejection fraction as well in dimensions.
Yeah, so the variability of conventional analysis of a 2D echo on a left ventricle is about plus or minus 6%.
Right.
The right ventricle is about plus or minus 25%. So it's yeah. So
So this is an order of magnitude higher in accuracy, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean the variation in ejection fraction on even on something as simple to analyze as the left ventricle is still sufficiently variable that you can't really take the number that you got from the previous scan 3 to 6 months ago and the one now and believe the difference. And you talk to any cardiologist, I've talked to dozens of them. I said, well, why don't you ever go back and look at the one you did 6 months ago and see what the trend line is? And they just laugh and say, depends on what machine we were using, what probe we were using, who the sonographer was, who did the analysis. Numbers are all over the map. You just can't compare one with the other. Well, that's not true for us. We did the study, different machines, different observers, different analysts, everything. And if you do it our way, you get the same, everybody gets the same answer.
Impressive. Dr. Yee, any more questions?
No, that's fine. I would actually maybe I came in late, but I didn't. I wanted to see what one of those images looked like and what after the machine gets through and converted into their AI data algorithm.
It looks like this.
I just want to see what
see that thing rotating in the left-hand side there? That's what it looks like. Those are the dots that were put on there, and that's the reconstruction. Okay. So it shows you where you had good coverage, where you had bad coverage. You can see on part of this ventricle as it comes out right now. There's hardly any dots on that plane of the left ventricle, but the system's able to fill in the gaps where there's not very much information and still give you an accurate result. And so, you can also go in and look at all 16 planes, and it'll show you exactly where the heart is in that plane, where the left ventricle is, where the right ventricle is, where the left atrium is, where the right atrium is. And so you, as the doctor, can make an assessment on how good a fit this model is to the actual MRI images that you're getting. And if you don't like them, you can move the dots around and redo it very quickly. But most people just say, I'm not going to get any better than that. So I believe the numbers, here I go. So, in the end, they just want the numbers. It's the numbers that tell them what to do with the patient. So if you have an ejection fraction like on this slide of 56%, you're normal, right? That's a normal ejection fraction from the left ventricle. If you're 35%, 32%, 30%, now you have a problem. Yep. And especially
Lincoln, you had a question?
No. That's fine. I just wanted to see. So basically, the issue is that the machine or this algorithm would give you a more accuracy, and you get immediate information rather than wait for the MR.
That's right. So all sorts of advantages compared to MR. 5 minutes of scanning versus an hour to 2 hours in the machine, full range of motion by the patient, have to be motionless in the machine. You have to inject contrast media into the person during the MRI and sedate them. You don't have to do any of that, of course. You can inject contrast media into patients. And in the United States, more and more hospitals are injecting contrast media into people doing ultrasound. It makes it much more costly because you have to have a nurse put in a needle and put in a line and inject the contrast media while the sonographer collects the images. So if you do go to contrast media, you're pretty much blowing any possibility for a profit from that procedure. So administrators are trying not to use more contrast media, but the doctors need more confidence in the numbers. And so they use more and more contrast media. Some hospitals are up to 60 to 70% of the cases are contrast. We give people confidence in those numbers without the necessity for contrast media. But when we presented that data, and there was a study done in Mazankowski Heart Institute in Edmonton and published last year, showing that we got exactly the same numbers with or without contrast media. the cardiologist we presented that to said, "That's great. I'll still do the contrast media, and I'll do your procedure, and I'll be even more confident in the numbers." So it's all about how confident are you in the numbers, and that's part of what we bring is not only ease and convenience and less cost, as we bring confidence.
Now, a couple other little questions is that, what is the normal, do they charge for these separate ultrasound echocardiograms, or is it charged differently? That's one.
There's a reimbursement code in the United States. You're talking about U.S.? Or, I mean, everybody around the world does it differently. So, I live in Canada. In Canada, we have, universal health care. So, we don't pay, they don't really track procedures, although physicians in Canada do get paid on a procedural basis for analysis. So that there is some tracking goes on with that. And they get paid extra to do ultrasound, contrast media in ultrasound. And so, there's more and more people doing contrast here as well. And again, the government healthcare, the provincial governments here who pay for the healthcare are trying to discourage the use of contrast media for that reason. But anyway,
for U.S. charges, I think you had a question about charging in U.S. for coding.
Yeah, so it depends. So if you're in a hospital under a DRG, you've got a set fee for whatever diagnosis the patient has. They typically get about $1,000 for doing an echocardiogram as part of a comprehensive package of a cardiac admission.
Yeah, is there a separate code for this, or is this still coded under the echocardiogram? No,
it's a separate code. So you missed that. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed that part.
So, the bottom of this slide, you can see the code 76377 is a specific code for doing a three-dimensional analysis of it from a 2D image. And that used to be true for, and that's true for 2D echo. Not true for 3D echo, not true for MRI or CAT scans anymore, because they already give you 3D images from all those things automatically. So it only applies now to 2D echo.
Now, how long has this device been in use?
We've had different versions of the device in clinics for about 6 or 7 years now, but we've been refining the device, making it more and more user friendly and more easy to use, and driving the costs out of it so that we can get to the leasing and a per use model. So we're now so we took we stopped selling the device, version 2 of the device, about 18 months ago, and fixed all the little problems that people didn't like about it, and brought back the version 3 now back out now. So as I said, we have 10 of them out, and the reception's been very good about them. So we're now feel that we have the device we need to go forward and start implementing this all over.
All right. So do you have the references to these studies that's been published, or have you published studies in regards to its comparison with standard 2D echo versus MRI data?
We have 150 publications by independent top cardiac units from all over the world who have verified the accuracy and precision of our device is equivalent to MRI in all sorts of different patient populations. And I'd be happy to send you the complete list of 150 publications if you'd like.
Well, I probably don't need 150 publications, but at least
we'll send that box over to your office.
I'll send you the top 10 then, whatever.
Yeah, maybe the first 5 or 10. Yeah,
it's a deal.
Give Clay.
Just send it to me, George. We'll get him over.
I'll send it to Clay, and you can send it on. Yeah. No,
okay.
And we're talking about the top centers. As I said, Baylor, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, University of Chicago. Centers in Royal Free in London, on UK, Paris Children's Hospital. We have publications from the top places all over the world. All we didn't pay for any of that. That was all done by them because they wanted to verify the accuracy and precision, and then they published it. Yeah.
One last question is that are you profitable at this point in time? And
No.
how much debt do you have?
So no, we're not profitable right now. We're just starting into this cycle. We have cash for another year in the bank at our current burn rate, and but we have some debt. We have about $1.3 million in convertible, very friendly convertible debt, most of which is held, the majority of which is held by myself and other directors of the company. So we're not in any kind of a problem, and that debt is good for another 14, 15 months, but it will be converted and most likely in January next year, because there's a price increase in the conversion in early February, and people will want to convert it at the higher price, so they'll convert it at the lower price in January, I'm sure. Yeah.
So you basically you're not going to need any more financing prior to becoming profitable.
It depends on how fast we may need financing to scale faster. If this, we hope that this technology will start getting out there in a big hurry, and if this thing catches fire, then we will need money to just scale and get the machines out there faster. But if it is going to take us 18 months to get to 80 to 100 installs, and yeah, no, we have enough money to make that all happen.
Okay, you brought up something. I don't want to control the whole discussion, but you brought up something that's interesting, and that what is different between version 2 and version 3 in regards to the glitches that you have to work out in order for it to be now moving full speed ahead.
Well, they're all listed on the website, so under key initiatives. So I encourage you to go and look under key initiatives on our website.
Sure.
Briefly, it was just to fix the usability. So version 2, the patient had to remain motionless even in the ultrasound. We fixed that with the new tracking system, so now the patient can move. Again, sonographers are used to rolling the patient around and putting the probe in different parts on their body and moving the patient around while they're doing that. And so that was a big drawback. Sonographers didn't like that. We also had an arm that held the tracking system out over the patient, which got in the way sometimes of patients who were somewhat larger, and that was a constant complaint from the users. We also had a situation where we would pair our machine to a particular ultrasound machine in the hospital. Well, if you know what happens to ultrasound machines in the hospital, they get put in the hallway, they get taken off to ICU, right. ED, and for them to have to find the particular machine our machine was paired to be able to do the analysis was an inconvenience. So we fixed that now, so it automatically calibrates. You hook it up to any machine that's there, it automatically calibrates itself, and you're ready to go. We had a situation where we were doing remote installs, remote calibrations, and remote training. We were going there and actually doing that, and scheduling that was a nightmare. So we've gotten rid of all. So a lot of these little tidbits here and there, but it's like you just want something that you pick up, take out of the box, and use, and that's what we have now. You just take it out of the box, plug it in, call us, we calibrate it, we install it for you in 10 minutes, and then you're ready to go. Teach you how to use it for an hour, and you're an expert, which is amazing, actually. Right. I mean, I don't know if you know much of it. I mean, 3D echo, people have been hoping that 3D echo, a place where you can get a holographic picture of the heart, would take over for 2D, because it takes 25 to 30 minutes for a standard 2D echocardiogram just for this capturing the images, because you got to get 16 images, and you got to twiddle the knobs and do all sorts of things every time. Every time you move the probe, you got to refocus everything. But people know how to do that. I mean, so people, the bright shining light on the future of 3D is you just have the probe, you point it at the person, and go click. It takes you 30 seconds to a minute to capture the image, and away you go. So you're the hope has always been you can go from a 25-minute image acquisition part of the procedure to a 2-minute image acquisition part. Unfortunately, the images are all still too blurry, the systems are too expensive, and it turns out that learning how to do that effectively is very difficult. And so, and analyzing those 3D images is equally difficult. So it takes a good 6 months to get good at capturing images with 3D ultrasound, the current 3D ultrasound machines. And it takes 6 months to get any good at analyzing those images. So, you know, it's a big commitment from an echocardiography group to switch to 3D. And so nobody has. So 3D is strictly a research tool. People don't do 3D for clinical medicine. Yeah.
Great questions, Lincoln. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you for speaking, or thank him for speaking. Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great to see you. Go ahead,
Sharing your
George. I think you
technology.
have some more slides to get through, maybe, or?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the revenue ramp. You know, we see this is a very conservative revenue ramp here in North America, where we would roll out these 100 units and get revenue either from per use fees or from capital purchases. The reason these things, you know, we would see, you know, some revenue about $1 million next year, but and ramping up reasonably quickly. And then in Europe, we would see about the same in Europe. We have a joint venture in China. This might happen much more quickly in China. We see the opportunity here. This industry, echocardiography, is dominated by 3 large companies: Philips, GE, and Siemens. Everybody else is just playing around in single digits market share. So, and the reason these guys are the giants, the gorillas in the space, is because they buy everybody else up. Philips recently bought TomTec for a little over $100 million, we're told. No one really, the exact number is not published anywhere. But they're the quickest comparison to us. You know, they had a software to analyze 2D and 3D images. Their 3D package doesn't work that well, but you know, Philips decided to take them out because they were providing software, analytical software, to GE, Siemens. Everybody was using TomTec software. So Philips bought TomTec and froze the software that all their competitors had for an analysis of cardiac ultrasound, and they've been evolving that with TomTec. We have users who have both TomTec and our software, and they use our software. Don't use TomTec software. So we anticipate that we will be acquired by one of the big 3 as soon as we get to dignity level. So what you have to understand about me, this is my 7th time around. My companies have been bought by Pfizer and DuPont and a number of large companies, and I worked in acquisitions for Pfizer for 2 years. So I bought companies, I've sold companies, and there's a dignity level. You gotta have, you know, for a big company to get excited about, you've got to have some traction in the marketplace. And in talking to all those acquisition people, you know, it's pretty sure that the dignity level is around 80 to 100 sites. So once we get to 80 to 100 sites, obviously fewer number if you've got the top sites in the world, and bigger numbers if you've got less than the all top sites in the world. But that's at that point is when they would step in. It's that point where, you know, somebody with GE who has 20 to 30,000 machines out there already and has a good relationship with those customers, would be able to take our machine and go out and deploy, you know, 20 or 30,000 of them in a very short period of time and capture value in a very quick period of time, as opposed to a small company like us, which would take years to capture that value. So, and they know that, and they use it, and they pay for it. You know, the multiples on EBITDA for these acquisitions have been anywhere from 10 to 1,000 on the value. So and we have very high margins. So it looks great. So, you know, we at a $6 million market cap, we have nothing but upside here once we start getting a bit more traction.
We've got a question, George.
Yeah.
Could you comment on, you know, as you've been presenting this product to different centers around the world, what has been your biggest challenge or pushback on the system? Or does everyone just love it?
Oh, the biggest pushback is always, you know, the capital, you know, the 18-month procedure a hospital has to go through to buy something for $50,000. I mean, the administrators are in charge of hospitals, and they've set up a very elaborate process to buy anything more than $25,000 becomes a
Cap.
a multi-committee, multi-evaluation, long-term line budget item. So that's, so which is why the lease model is looking very happy, because that's just an operating budget. And at $15,000, the head of cardiology can sign off on that. He doesn't have to go to 15 committees. The biggest pushback we've had has been usability, and we believe we've solved that problem. So we're not seeing pushback at this point in time, really. We're installing them. Right now, the hardest part is COVID is consuming all the available mind space of all the doctors in the world. Even the cardiologists are now concerned about having to have a tsunami of post-COVID patients to deal with, and what is that all about, and what's going on there, and how are these hearts going to progress in the future. So there's a lot of mind space being spent on that. So
Sure.
the hardest part is just getting in front of them and showing them what we do. And again, now that we have some of the top cardiologists in the world using the machine and talking about it, I think that barrier will come down pretty quickly. And as I said, somebody like MD Anderson would need hundreds of machines to deal with the number of patients they have in a year. So we really look upon this as, we sell one to a hospital today, and next year we'll be selling them 10. And so repeat sales are always the best kind. They're a lot faster.
Right.
So,
yeah. Like organic growth in your marketing program.
Yeah. So it won't take too many major hospitals to hit those 80 to 100 installs. I mean, we don't need them in 80 to 100 different places. We can
Right.
We just need showing people using the equipment. 100 machines actively being used on a daily basis is more than enough proof of adoption of the technology and its value.
Mm-hmm. Great. You want to go through your key investment considerations?
Right. So it's a big market. It's being de-risked because we have regular approvals in 4 major jurisdictions. I haven't talked much about China. We expect to be taken out here in 18 months or so at a nice, very high valuation compared to where we are today. We have a proven team of people. We've built something that is unique and absolutely miraculous in terms of analyzing cardiac echocardiograms. And so, we have money in the bank to finish the deal here. So we are in a very good situation to go forward and change the way cardiac ultrasound is done worldwide. And that's important because I don't want to have any more children going into an MRI machine for 2 hours and traumatized and sedated and injected just to find out what's wrong with their heart. And that's why I get out of bed in the morning. And I still feel very good about the fact that we've had even version 2 machines have been used thousands of times. So that's thousands of children who haven't gone to an MRI because of what we've done already. And we have the opportunity here to do that for millions of children and millions of adults. And so we're going to get it done.
Yeah, it's a great product. I mean, there's no question you've built a better mousetrap. It's kind of like, we call this a Steve Austin product. It's better, it's faster, it's stronger. It's just the next level. And so I think that, anyone that's looking at this right now, you've got capital, you've got a huge captive market for the device. It's a hard argument to make something to say that's not a better solution than what they have currently. And just add a little time to this, and a takeout value of 100 million would be 20 times your current market value. So it's a lot of good things about what you're doing here. It's very exciting.
And we've been at it for almost 15 years, and the problem was there 15 years ago. All the big companies, GE, Philips, Siemens, have been working on trying to solve the problem for 50 years by trying to make 3D equipment that works better. And they've been spectacularly unsuccessful. So our technique of using a good old-fashioned 2D and just doing a better job analyzing it using artificial intelligence has turned out to be the way to go. Right. And has gotten us to a solution. 20 years from now, we'll probably have 3D. And that's fine because we can analyze 3D better than anybody can analyze 3D too. So we'll not be out of a business as soon as 3D arrives. But I'm telling you, 3D has been coming every 5 years for the last 20 years, and it's still 5 years away. So we have lots of opportunity here to change the world now.
Yep. Yeah. In the meantime, the solution is available through Ventripoint. And I can't imagine that these guys have been trying so hard that they'll just buy you and put the solution on the market.
Well, so they can make $1 billion over in the 2 years, and it's going to take me 20 years to make this.
Right.
It doesn't, like I said, I was an acquisitions advisor. I mean, like, this is the way acquisitions people think, find something that everybody wants and put it down the channel.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason why pharmaceutical companies don't actually want to manufacture their drugs or do anything. All they want to do is sell drugs, because the money is in selling them, not in developing and manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
Same as car dealers now. Car dealers, car men don't want to manufacture their cars; they just want to sell them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's the same concept. And once you have this worldwide distribution channel, then you just want to put more things down the channel.
Yep. No, it makes total sense. Quick announcement. Today's code word is yellowfin. Again, yellowfin, like the tuna, yellowfin tuna, which we all know out here in California pretty well. George, great presentation. I just want to make sure that if anyone's got a question that they've been thinking about asking, go ahead and type it in the Q&A or raise your hand and we can get that question answered. Just a great program. We love to see these, companies that bring a better solution to the market, especially when there's such a big unmet need that exists. We just think you've got something tiger by the tail, and the future looks real bright for you. And we're excited to be along for the journey here with you. We look forward to having you back on. I know you're going to have more centers that you'll be announcing soon with those other placements that you've got in the can right now. And we'll look forward to having you on very soon. I think at this point in time, I think we're about up to our time limit. I don't see any additional questions. I want to thank everyone for coming on today. George, appreciate you coming on and bringing us up to speed on everything Ventripoint. And we look forward to having you on again real soon.
Thanks for the invite. I hope if anybody has questions, there's my contact information. Send me an email. I'll be happy to respond. Okay.
We have a question. I do still want to come in.
I love questions.
Yeah. What about competitors? Is there any competitors in your space? Someone that's bringing something similar to what you have in the market?
The competition is 3D. And as I said, it's a long way off yet. We do not have anybody who's trying to analyze 2D. Nobody else has created, as I said, we had to create our own tracking system.
Right.
So we really don't have anybody who can do what we do. And nobody's even attempted to go through the FDA claiming equivalence to us, let alone to MRI. So no, our competition right now is just to get awareness by the doctors that they can do this, and it's quick and easy, and that's our competition right now, is getting the message out.
Right, and you've got a pretty significant kind of an IP estate too for the technology. Give us a little bit of you might have covered that, but if you can just kind of give us a quick update on that.
Well, the original technology was developed by Dr. Florence Sheehan in the University of Washington in Seattle, and she patented the whole knowledge-based reconstruction approach, and we have a worldwide exclusive license for that with only a 1% royalty on it. So we have that, and then we have a patent pending on our new tracking device, which is made it user-friendly. The original technology used by Dr. Sheehan to prove the accuracy of the software is just not feasible to be used in a medical environment. So we had to, you need both the physical manifestation of the device as well as the software. And we've also improved the software significantly since it came out of that research lab. It was research grade software. In fact, we took the opportunity earlier this year to rewrite the source code from scratch. It hadn't been touched in 12 years, or it had been modified constantly for 12 years, but it had not been rewritten for 12 years from scratch. And so our team took it on and rewrote it from scratch. And you'll see when you read the key initiatives on the website, we discovered all sorts of ways to make it work even better. So most of our intellectual property, our IP, is know-how and proprietary know-how. We have proprietary databases that allow the KBR to work. We have proprietary algorithms that fits those databases and gets us to the accuracy and precision that we have. And then we have a new tracking system, which is, the old tracking system that was being used had been developed 25 years ago, and no one's figured a better way to do it until us. Mm-hmm. So we actually have a number of people approaching us to access our tracking system because for biopsies, needle controls, there's all sorts of reasons why you want to have an accurate three-dimensional tracking system, and we have that now. So there's other opportunities for the company to partner that technology and license that technology out as well.
Oh, that's great. Love to hear that. Okay, George, again, thanks so much for coming on today. Really appreciate your time. If for those who would like to get additional information about the company, you can always go to their website at Ventripoint. That's VENTRIPOINT.com. You can get these initiatives list that we've been referenced a few times during this meeting. There's also a lot of information about the VMS 3.0 system as well, including press releases, background on the team, which we didn't really have a lot of time to cover, but they've got a fantastic team that's very experienced in this space to bring this to market and move it to some other purchaser down the road, which is, I think is the natural exit strategy for the company. Thanks everyone again today. Wishing everyone, George, wishing you a great Thanksgiving holiday. And I know that you're in Canada, so I don't know if you celebrate. You had yours in October, right? October 12th?
That's right. We get it done early in the year.
Well, you'll be hard working while we're out having our Thanksgiving dinner.
Yes, well, that's okay. I wish you guys all have a good holiday, safe holiday, and we'll be here on the other side of the holiday working away.
Great. I echo that. Wishing everyone on the call today a great Thanksgiving with your families. Until then, be safe and be well. Take care, George. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.